The UK is getting applauded by the Muslim world for recognizing Palestine as a state, but do they deserve this praise, or are they the ones who are responsible for the situation Palestine is in? Critics are pointing out the irony in this recognition coming more than 100 years after the Balfour Declaration that backed the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and 77 years after the creation of Israel and the British Mandate of Palestine. To understand this hypocrisy, we need to go back to 1916. The First World War was raging, and Britain and France secretly negotiated the Sykes-Picot Agreement, a plan to divide the Arab provinces of the collapsing Ottoman Empire into zones of British and French control. Palestine was placed under international administration, though in practice, Britain took control after the war. The agreement ignored Arab aspirations for self-determination, despite British promises made to Arab leaders in exchange for revolting against the Ottomans. This was one of the earliest betrayals of Palestinian and broader Arab sovereignty by Western powers, a pattern that would persist. Just 1 year later, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration stating, "His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people." But crucially, it added, "It being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine." At the time, Palestinians made up around 90% of the population, yet they were not consulted. The Balfour Declaration laid the foundation for Zionist immigration and occupation, and later for the displacement of Palestinians, all under British colonial rule during the Mandate period between 1920 and 1948. All of which paved the way for the 1948 Nakba, when over 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly displaced and dispossessed. Today, critics argue that recognizing Palestine without halting arms sales, imposing sanctions, or supporting international accountability makes the move meaningless. Not to mention, the UK has continued to shield Israel diplomatically as well. It has repeatedly abstained or voted against UN resolutions calling for ceasefires, and even resisted efforts to investigate Israeli war crimes by the International Criminal Court. But even with most of the world on board with Palestinian statehood, the country is still not a full member of the UN. Many analysts say that these recognitions are a result of growing domestic pressures, which have forced leaders to save face in response to growing liberal support for Palestine. According to analysts like Stephen Cook, it's hard to argue that these recognitions will help Palestinians in any concrete way. Others worry that they might actually even make things worse because it gives Israel a reason to double down on its deadly occupation. There has also been intense opposition from the US, which has already blocked Palestinian officials from even attending the General Assembly. Stephen Cook also questions the conditions that Britain and Canada proposed with the recognition. That if humanitarian conditions supposedly improve in Gaza, Britain will hold off on recognition. And if Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas fails to hold elections that exclude Hamas, the Canadian government will also not recognize Palestine. But why are these conditions necessary if recognizing Palestine is the right thing to do? Perhaps a more important question is, why now? Why not recognize Palestine in 2002 when President George Bush made a two-state solution official US policy, or in 1993 when after then Palestinian Authority leader Yasser Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin signed the Declaration of Principles at the White House? Those moments carried genuine diplomatic momentum. But today, after almost 2 years of devastating war and with little goodwill remaining, conditional recognition of Palestine appears more symbolic than ever. Now, let's talk about the French-Saudi plan that calls for an immediate end to the war, the return of all hostages, and a complete Israeli withdrawal. Under this plan, Hamas would have to hand over power to a politically independent committee under the Palestinian Authority, something it has already agreed to, and then to lay down its arms, which it has not. The international community would help the Palestinian Authority rebuild Gaza and govern the territories, possibly with the help of foreign peacekeepers. Regional peace and integration, likely including Saudi normalization of ties with Israel, would follow. But all of this isn't so easy. The plan also calls for holding elections within a year, but President Mahmoud Abbas has previously delayed voting when it appeared that his party would lose, blaming Israeli restrictions. Hamas, which won the last national elections in 2006, would be excluded unless it surrenders its weapons and recognizes Israel. All of which means that this plan is likely to end in failure like past ones, bringing little relief to the suffering of Palestinians.